Hello, welcome everyone. Welcome, welcome. If you feel called, please turn on your camera so we can see your wonderful faces. It's great to be together today on the first official day of spring if you're here in the Northern Hemisphere. Great. Well, welcome to Dear Yusef, a celebration of Yusef Komunyakaa. My name is Stephanie Madrid. I'm the Director of External Relations here at the Fine Arts Work Center. Today's event will be hosted by John Murillo and Nicole Sealey, editors of the recently released anthology Dear Yusef, Essays, Letters, and Poems for and about one Mr. Komunyakaa. And Nicole's holding up the beautiful book. Thank you, Nicole. Before I turn things over to John and Nicole, I have a few words for everyone. Today's event is being recorded and will appear on the FAWC YouTube channel. Please keep your mic on mute during the program, and if you have any tech trouble or questions, please feel free to send me a direct message through the chat. Again, my name is Stephanie Madrid. You can click it in the chat and select me, and I will receive that message personally. You may also send any programming questions to our online programming director, Jennifer Jean, who's here in the room, who will be reading tonight, but is our lovely manager of the 24 Pearl Street online writing program. If you haven't already, please consider purchasing the Dear Yusef anthology. After this, I'll include a purchase link in the chat. And lastly, at the end, keep an eye out for announcements about our exciting changes to FAWC's online programming that are coming later this spring. Thank you for listening to my spiel. Now, please join me in welcoming John Murillo.
Good evening. Thank you, Stephanie. I noticed that when I move this way, it looks like I have a big man bun up top. Kind of like that. Good evening, y'all. Thank you for joining us. Thank you to the Fine Arts Work Center in Provincetown for so much. But tonight, especially for making space and time for us to celebrate this beautiful anthology, Dear Yusef. Yusef Komunyakaa, I'm sure all of you know him and his work, but briefly, he's a Pulitzer Prize winning poet, librettist, and celebrated teacher who was a fellow at the Fine Arts Work Center in 1980-81. And in putting this event together, we wanted to invite contributors to the anthology who also had a relationship with the Fine Arts Work Center. I'll be introducing you to all the readers momentarily, but I'll give you a little run of show, yeah? And also thank you all again for joining us. It's Thursday, as was mentioned, this is the first night of spring, a lot of things you can be doing, and you're choosing to spend it here with us, with poetry and with Yusef, and for that, we're very grateful. So tonight I'm gonna open with a little bit of an intro about the anthology, why we compiled it, why we thought it was necessary, what Yusef means to us. And I'll read my contribution. And after that, we'll each read alphabetically. So it'll be Major Jackson, well, I'll read the bios in a minute, but Major Jackson, Jennifer Jean, and Nicole Sealey. Then we'll circle back and each of us will read one of our favorite Yusef Komunyakaa poems. And then finally, we'd like to open it up to conversation, questions, testimonials from some of the attendees. Sound good? All right. So in May of, I think it was 2018, New York University, PEN America, and Cave Canem co-sponsored day-long symposium celebrating the life and work of Yusef Komunyakaa. Yusef was a faculty member at Cave Canem and New York University, from which he recently retired. And there were readings, panel discussions, there was a musical performance that night. And Yusef got to take it all in, live and in person. You know, often we give our flowers to people after they've left us, and they don't get a chance to hear how beloved they are and how much their work and presence has meant to the people whose lives they've touched. So this was a day where Yusef was able to have that experience live and in person. And when we put that event together, we thought about giving Yusef something he can hold and take with him and carry with him long after the day was done. And we took our inspiration from an anthology that Prairie Lights had compiled for Philip Levine, called Coming Close, 40 Essays on Philip Levine, as well as work on the poet Larry Levis. So we approached Wesleyan University Press, where Yusef published a lot of his earlier work, and we put together this anthology of letters, essays, and poems written by fellow poets, students, friends, mentees. And when we put the call out, it was really, really, really difficult to narrow it down to these few hundred pages. People came from everywhere wanting to celebrate Yusef in his life. So that's it. And it's been out for a while. We've been doing these readings, and it's been really great to see people turn out for Yusef. So I'll start, but before I do, let me go ahead and let me introduce you to the players. Major Jackson is the author of 6 books of poetry, most recently Razzle Dazzle, New and Selected Poems, 2002 to 2022, and a collection of critical essays, A Beat Beyond, the selected prose of Major Jackson. He lives in Nashville, Tennessee, where he is the Gertrude Conway Vanderbilt Chair in the Humanities at Vanderbilt University. He serves as a poetry editor of the Harvard Review and hosts the amazing podcast, The Slowdown. And was a fellow at the Fine Arts Work Center when, Major?
99, 2000.
99, 2000. All right, all right. Jennifer Jean's poetry collections include FAWC, Object Lesson, and The Fool. Her teaching resource book is Object Lesson, A Guide to Writing Poetry. She's received honors, residencies, and fellowships from the Kenyon Review Writers Workshop, Disquiet, Zank Books, the Massachusetts Cultural Council, and the Academy of American Poets. Currently, she serves as the Senior Program Manager of 24 Pearl Street, the Fine Arts Work Center's online writing program. I am the author of probably the greatest poetry collections in the language, but later for that. I've written 2 books. One's called Up Jump the Boogie. One's called Contemporary American Poetry. Won a couple awards, yada, yada. I teach at Hunter College. Nicole Sealey is the author of Ordinary Beasts, finalist for the Penn Open Book Award and the Hurston Wright Legacy Awards. The Animal After Whom Other Animals Are Named, winner of the Drinking Gourd Chapbook Poetry Prize, and the Ferguson Report, An Erasure, which is a winner of the OCM Bocas Prize for Poetry and finalist for the NAACP Image Award in Poetry, and from which an excerpt was awarded the 2021 Forward Prize for Best Single Poem. And she currently teaches in the MFA Writers Workshop in Paris for New York University. And she was born in St. Thomas, yes. All right, so I'm getting tired of my own voice right now, so let's just do it alphabetically. Yeah, so Major, I'm gonna let you kick it off, and I'll jump in after Jennifer.
Wonderful. How's my volume? Great, wonderful. Thank you, everyone. I want to thank John and Nicole for the vision of this book. I utterly agree that we have many elder poets who have laid the foundation for our literature, both as practitioners, but also as pedagogues. We didn't read Yusef's full biography, but I think one thing that we failed to discuss is the extent to which he has mentored a generation of poets in his teaching assignments, both formal and informal, from Indiana University to Princeton to NYU, and many writers' conferences for at least 3 decades, I can comfortably say. I was never Yusef's student, but Yusef entered my ken when my teacher, Sonia Sanchez, brought to class, actually assigned a jazz poetry anthology edited by Yusef and Sasha Feinstein. And just the name altogether, I was like, who's this Komunyakaa guy, you know? And little did I know, Yusef name would be a carrying card as a way for me to become a member of the Darkroom Collective. So when I met members of the Darkroom, they asked, who are you reading? And I mentioned several people, and I dropped Yusef, and they were like, okay, he's in. It was like a calling card. Um, and by that time, I had read Yusef's early books. And this was around the time that I just graduated from undergrad, had assumed a curatorial position at the Painted Bride Art Center in Philadelphia, was told to pull together a series last minute. And among the writers I called, Yusef was the person I called. This was 1994 in Philadelphia at the Painted Bride Art Center. And great correspondence over, this is the old days where you typed up letters. There was no emails. And I called him, but it started off with a letter. And he arrived and gave a fantastic reading, of which I'm sure it was an audience of maybe 30 people, but all of us left that reading changed. He and I went out to dinner with some other folks, and then he and I went to had a nightcap at a jazz club, and we talked literature. We talked everyone from Thelonious Monk to Gwendolyn Brooks. And what I distinctly remember about that evening is the width of his intelligence and how he became a model for me of someone that you could um, write about it all, not just write about one's origins, but approach history, approach myths, folklore, music. I mean, he became the template for how my mind works in poems. He also talks about meeting another literary hero, um, uh, Robert Hayden, and how magical that made it sound. These were names of folks that I had only encountered in anthologies or single volume collections. And Yusef became a bridge to a kind of living um, uh, literary ancestry to me. And I could go on about what he has meant, his ear, the music. If you hear any use of repetition in my work, it's owed because of him. And there are poems that are easily memorable that one could memorize just based on the music alone. So I'm gonna stop there because this is really an essay in the waiting. I think I've approached it several times. I think we were told to read Yusef's poem and then read one of our own. I'm gonna read mine first so that I don't have to follow Yusef, but it's in this anthology, Dear Yusef, and I wrote it specifically for him. I lived in New Orleans, and Yusef, of course, grew up in Louisiana and became of age in New Orleans as a writer. This is called French Quarter. Over powdered beignets, over a demitasse of chicory near Royale, I came to grips I am the lonely sort, for I am ever seeking an education, my head sideways, a book winged in my hand, its words like a concert. The fried dough going cold and congealing, the passing tourist drowned out, a sullen look on my face. It is when I most want to make love. Dostoevsky was a way out of my confusion, as was Baraka, whom I gave my reverence freely. Nothing I believed stayed, and thus my melancholy deepened, though banjos and clarinets played all over the streets through late afternoon rain, black bottom stop, eucalyptus, and live oaks aging against arpeggio runs. I suffered a great pity, and the gypsies were all too quick to auger behind cardboard boxes. Stubborn cats mewed in and out around cafe tables, and pigeons sprang from Gothic balconies on the square. If I were one to make concessions, my life was a streak of quandaries and doggeries with quaint and hospitable inscriptions on doors. Every chapter a tempest or escape hatch at some back table where I read alone in faint light, a thin band of gold hops at the bottom of a beer mug on the world's piazza. I am harnessed in the questions I have made a home. Were I a character in a novel, I would be assured change was around the corner. Perhaps a priest, careworn like me in this crowd, who likes driving country roads in winter while thinking gloomy thoughts. Uh, the the link there is more than place. I think one of the passions that Yusef modeled was to be a writer, was to be engaged in the literature, and not just the literature of one's own country, but the width of it. And also art. One time he came back to Philadelphia and we spent a afternoon at the Philadelphia Museum of Art, and he was taking notes. So I felt like I need to borrow pen and paper from a nearby guard and started taking notes. And I was surprised by the artwork that stopped him, that paused him. It was a curious, beautiful thing to watch him read deep inside a painting that I many times had breezed by. I heard Yusef read this poem in Philadelphia for the first time shortly after he wrote it. It was in celebration of the Painted Bride Quarterly. And I think, you know, that moment in Frank O'Hara's poem, The Day Lady Died, where everyone breathes, everyone is held by her singing. Distinctly remember this poem and its impact on the audience there. And it has to do, for me, with a poet, an Afro-American poet, for whom the body has, the Black male body in particular, has been a source of labor for this country. And here was Yusef in this poem claiming his body and claiming his intellect at the same time, and claiming his all parts of himself. I afterwards went up to him and told him that this is probably the most important poem that he's written. But who am I? What do I know? I just know that its impact on me. Anodyne. I love how it swells into a temple where it is held prisoner, where the god of blame resides. I love slopes and peaks, the secret paths that make me selfish. I love my crooked feet shaped by vanity and work, shoes made to outlast belief, the hardness coupling milk it can't fashion. I love the lips, salt and honeycomb on the tongue, the hair holding off rain and snow, the white moons of my fingernails. I love how everything begs blood into song and prayer inside an egg. A ghost hums through my bones like Pan's midnight flute shaping internal laws beside a troubled river. I love this body, made to weather the storm in the brain, raised out of the deep smell of fish and water hyacinth, out of rapture and the first regret. I love my big hands. I love it clear down to the soft, quick motor of each breath. The liver's 10 kinds of desire, the kidney's lust for sugar. This skin, this sack of dung and joy. This spleen floating like a compass needle inside nighttime, always divining West Africa's dusty horizon. I love the birthmark posed like a fighting cock on my right shoulder blade. I love this body, this solo and ragtime jubilee behind the left nipple, because I know I was born to wear out at least 100 angels. I could keep going, y'all. I have poems memorized by Yusef. I will bore you. Anyway, we probably should pass the mic. Thank you.
That was amazing, man. And I mean, none of Yusef's poems could bore any of us. So, um, Jennifer, that's you.
All right. Major, thank you for your heart. That was amazing. And thank you, John and Nicole. It's an honor to join you in celebrating Mr. Komunyakaa. Though I normally riff off of bullet points on these occasions, I'd like to read a prepared text today. I'm reading one right now, and it's in place in case my voice betrays me and wavers away from what I hope to share about dear Yusef. In 1984, I received a D- on a research paper about the Vietnam conflict. My aim was to simply explain the situation, all of it. I didn't even try to narrow the topic. I threw myself at volumes of primary and secondary sources beyond my middle school grasp and expected a capital T truth to reveal itself. The result was overwhelming awfulness on the page and in my heart. Later, in 1998, when I began to toy with poetry rather seriously, I picked up Yusef Komunyakaa's Dien Kai Dao and chewed and chewed and chewed on it because it contained the marrow that I craved, which was a boots on the ground view into the war hell that claimed my own father's mind and shoved him forever from our family when I was 7 months old. So without this view, I was stuck in blame and hate. Without this view, I could never forgive him, could never forgive America. But it wasn't only that collection's content, which made me return to it again and again, that made this necessary view sink into my heart and change it. It was the excellence and music and cut to the bone reality of Yusef's poetry that made so much grace possible. I can draw a line from reading and processing that collection to my current work with Iraqi poet Hana Ahmed Jaber. She and I have been corresponding via poetry with the consciousness that we are communicating across former enemy lines. In one poem to Hana, I wrote, "My grasp of war is as vast as a droplet of ink in the word, in the line, in the poem, in the book, in the universe-sized library of the war you've known." As with Yusef, I am reading a heels on the ground view of war in Hana's poetry that is wrapped up in my own history, given the nation that claims me. As with Yusef, Hana is committed to and accomplishing excellent poetry to convey the many wars she's lived through. Last year, when the call came for poems for John and Nicole's anthology, I began to read Yusef's work anew, which is what a great anthology like this one should do, point a reader to more and more great poems. Previously, I hadn't spent as much time with Yusef's book, Copacetic, because it predated Dien Kai Dao. On this go-around, I found it full of intense audio ekphrasticks, what I like to call saturations. I was also drawn to it because the title was familiar. As a child playing under the kitchen table, I'd overhear my mom tell friends, everything is copacetic, meaning everything is satisfactorily excellent. It's a word wrapped up in jazz, and I love jazz, though I'm a neophyte. So when I read Yusef's poem, Copacetic Mingus, I didn't recognize the concert, the characters beyond Mingus as key, nor many of the instrumental references. But this poem alludes with authority and mirrors with maturity the music it covers. It conveys the reader into immediate sights, sounds, breaths, lusts, and knowings, as much as is possible with language. And I'm going to start off with his poem. I'm flipping it from what Major did. And I'm going to share with you Copacetic Mingus. It begins with an epigraph. Let me see here. Mingus 1, 2, and 3. Which is the image you want the world to see? Copacetic Mingus. Heartstring blessed wood, and every moment the things made of, ball of fat back, licked by fingers of fire. Hard love, it's hard love. Running big hands down the upright's wide hips, rocking his moon-eyed mistress with gold in her teeth. Art and life bleed into each other as he works the bow. But tonight, we're both a long ways from the mile-high city, 1973, here in New Orleans, years below sea level. I listen to Pithecanthropus erectus, up and down, under and over, every which way. Thump, thump, da-da, ah, yes, wood heavy with tenderness. Mingus fingers the loom gone on Segovia, dogging the raw strings, unwaxed with rosin, hyperbolic bass line. Oh no, hard love, it's hard love. So this poem this great poem gave me an entry point into covering my own obsession with a musical clip of Judy Garland from 1954, where she's singing The Man That Got Away in her version of the movie A Star is Born. And I attempted to detail that experience of viewing her in the same way that Yusef did, with authority and some jazzified diction, hopefully. The fact, and also I was attempting to detail the fact of her body as instrument. So the resultant poem is what appears in the anthology. And I'm going to end my sharing with all of you by reading this poem. It too starts with an epigraph from Judy Garland in that movie. She says, "You don't know what it's like to watch somebody you love crumble away bit by bit." Copacetic Judy. In the blue, blue after hour, every chair's upended, meaning late and early. The bee tenders turned each bulb to crepuscule, the meanest light. And Judy tunes the muted trumpet with her alma immortale, all of 32 and worn with knowing, with belting, shoving those bangs off, with hope you burn up. Gosh golly, why should anyone bother with a comeback high? 'Cause genius turns up, and why that dress? Bow at the throat, midnight azul, cutting her at some dreamt up waistline, not her waistline, but she's torching Arlen and Gershwin like a copacetic Frances Ethel, like woman. She reminds me of Sylvia Plath, callous on the voice, bitter self-killer, queen contralto, ugly duck, a kind of jazzy fado. He's there in the shadow of the bar, dark liquid, the man that got her Dave, Vin, Sid, Mark, Mick, etc. stand-in, my father, brother stand-in. I've the scene on repeat. I saturate and tune, and art and life bleed into each. As you say, dear Yusef, we saturate in what we want drawn out, like an Epsom bath pulling at atomized shrapnel. Your surface stings as the hard love of the deeper wound comes clean. So that's all I have for all of you. Thanks so much.
Ah, good work. I love it. I love it. Um, y'all need to pick this up. Y'all need to pick this up. Get some copacetic Jennifer. Um, so a little anecdote. I'm surprised Nicole's not tired of hearing this story. So Yusef was one of my early influences, and because he's one of my foundational poets, he's someone whose influence I haven't been able to shake, and I think I'm okay with that. I think I'm okay with you hearing a little bit of my poetic father's voice in my voice, yeah. Um, when I started applying to grad schools, one of the schools I got into was New York University. Right around the time that Yusef was applying for, I think it's the global professorship. I can't remember what the exact title. And then he took the job right when I was making my decisions. And at that point, it was a wrap. I was going to study with Yusef, come hell or high water. And I did. So I went to NYU, and I think he had kind of worked his contract such that he didn't have to start right away. So the first year he was off, and he started my second year. So I'm in New York, and one of my friends, Dante Michaud, the poet, was Yusef's assistant at the time. And he called me one night and he says, "Hey, Yusef's having a dinner for Martin Espada." Martin Espada is another poet who's really dear to me. And we've grown really close over the years. Dante knew this. So he says, "Do you want to have dinner over Yusef's house for Martin?" I said, "Hell yes, I want to have dinner at Yusef's house for Martin." So I went to Yusef Komunyaka's house, and he cooked. And I couldn't believe I was there. Dinner was cool. He cooked. I finished my food. After dinner, he looks up across the table at me and he says, "Do you play pool?" And I said, "Yeah, I play pool." So he calls me and we go down to his basement. We had this pool table, and Martin and the other people follow down, and it's a beautiful pool table. And he racked up some balls and he allowed me to break. And I broke. A couple balls went in. I hit another shot, and then I missed. And then when I missed, I looked up and Martin looks up, he goes, and yeah, Yusef took that pool cue and just started just popping them in. Pop, pop, crisp, every shot precise, banking. I mean, trick shots, the whole nine. I mean, it's like something off television. And he cleared the table. I didn't get another shot in at all. He just one go, cleared out every ball of the table, dropped the cue, and then kind of looked at me and walked off. Right. And that was the first lesson and probably the most profound lesson in all of this poetry stuff. When he asked me, "Do you play pool?" what I should have said was, "I have played, I try, maybe, no is what I should have said." He plays pool, yeah. He writes poems. So the lesson is, if you're going to do this, do it. Yeah, there are levels to this. And he was a practitioner of the art of pool. And it was a serious lesson for me. You know, if I was going to undertake to become a poet, it meant doing it for real, right? And I walked with that. And we've, happened to maintain a relationship ever since. That was over a decade ago now. So the poem that I'm going to read is in this anthology, and I'm going to read mine first and then read the Yusef poem. And I started a project that I never completed. The project was, I was going to write a poem to each of my mentors and try as best I could to approximate their voice in the poem, but I only got as far as Yusef. And I just told a lie to you, because the truth is that wasn't what I set out to do. The truth is I just wanted to write a poem, and I looked up and it sounded like a Yusef poem, and I couldn't get away from that. So I just titled it Dear Yusef. And then the project kind of grew out of that. So after I wrote this poem, I had decided that I would try to write poems in homage to my mentors. But none of the other poems really worked out. But this one did. And it's in the anthology. So, and I probably shouldn't have said that it sounds like a Yusef poem, because it really doesn't. It sounds like a Yusef poem the way that I sound like Luther Vandross when singing Never Too Much, which is to say not at all. But you'll see, hopefully, it's in conversation with his work. It's called Dear Yusef. Again, last night, I caught Medusa sitting in my living room. Not the devil, not the dog in the shadows made of shadows, not the old translucent maroon sharpening his machete, but Medusa, lighting a spliff, spreading tarot cards across the floor. I didn't startle when a door slammed, but half expected a black cat to run over my shoes. She wore the same red lipstick as the night before, Yusef. Same black teddy with the skinny strap slipped from her shoulder. Singing to herself, her voice split in two, contralto, baritone, balladeer stroking the braids of a woman everyone knows he beats, the woman singing yes, and it's all right, sequined sleeves hiding every track, a disco ball scattering shards of light along some drab and peeling wall. Medusa cut the deck, relit the spliff, flipped one card, then another. Took a pull so long, I thought she'd catch fire. You've not always been a good man, she said, showing 7 cards, coughing hard. There was something she wasn't telling me. She liked that I didn't ask. Liked how I watched her dusting ashes from her thigh. I see trouble finds you easy. Hey, boy. I pulled her onto my lap, or I slid myself somehow up under her. I can't remember which. She's singing yes, and it's all right. Then slipping the joint fireside first between her lips, she took my face in her hands and shotgunned a cloud into my open mouth. Some nights, Yusef, the serpents curse my name. Some nights, they tell me secrets. And now the real deal. We were joking before all you joined us, the other poets and I, about which poems we were gonna read. And Major has selected his poem, Jennifer, Nicole selected theirs, and I was joking that there was nothing left, which is so not true, because Yusef, one of the things that a lot of people have said about his work over the years is just how vast is his canon. And not only has he written a lot of poems, he's written a lot of great poems. And, it's something that a lot of poets talk about, wanting to, at the end of it all, you want to be able to say that you've put one star in the sky. Yeah, one poem that will stand the test of time, that people will come back to after you're gone. And I think Yusef has done this time and time again. So there were hundreds of poems I could have chosen after the other ones were chosen. I chose Blue Light Lounge Sutra for the performance poets at Harold Park Hotel. It's another poem, it's another instance, I should say, in which Yusef has taught me. In this case, he's teaching me what's required to be a poet. The need gotta be so deep, words can't answer simple questions. All night long, notes stumble off the tongue and color the air indigo. So deep, fragments of gut and flesh cling to the song. You got to get into it. So deep, salt crystallizes on eyelashes. The need got to be so deep, you can vomit up ghosts and not feel broken. Till you are no more than a half ounce of gold in painful brightness. You got to get into it. Blow that saxophone. So deep, all the sex and dope in this world can't erase your need to howl against the sky. The need gotta be so deep. You can't just wiggle your hips and rise up out of it. Chaos in the cosmos, modern man in the pepper pot. You gotta get hooked into every hungry groove. So deep, the bomb locked in rust opens like a fist. Into it so deep, rhythm is pre-memory. The need gotta be basic, animal need, to see and know the terror we are made of, honey. Because if you wanna dance this boogie, be ready to let the devil use your head for a drum. That's the Don Dada, Yusef Komunyakaa.
I think I'm next, yeah? I want to echo John's thanks to the good folks at FAWC, also to the contributors that number more than 60, also those that endorsed the book, and Terrence, of course, for the beautiful, beautiful cover art. And of course, all of you for being here with us. As John said, you could be doing anything, and yet you've chosen to be here celebrating Yusef with us. I'm going to read from my contribution in the book. It's not a poem. It's about my time studying under Yusef at NYU more than a decade ago. So as a grad student in the program, one takes 2 classes each semester for 2 years. With that math, it's possible to study under 8 different teachers. I studied with Yusef twice. My contribution to the anthology is about my time, again, as I've said, with him at NYU. And so other than that, I don't think you need more context. And then after reading this, I'll read one of Yusef's poems. This is called Office Hours. As a student of Yusef Komunyakaa's, I met with him weekly during office hours. If, for whatever reason, I was late to sign up and all the slots were filled, as they often were, I'd stalk the sign-up sheet for cancellations or stand at the ready outside his office in case there were day of no-shows. And I wasn't alone in doing so. It was that serious. Time with Yusef that precious. I was poet-struck, to say the least. It was nerve-wracking, especially at first, sitting across from the man who wrote Blue Light Lounge Sutra. We spent hours thinking through early drafts I'd normally be too shy to share. But I knew that having Yusef Komunyakaa's eyes on my poems in progress is like having Denzel Washington run lines with a beginning actor. Of the drafts shared undone, one I could neither shake nor break open comes immediately to mind. And this is the early draft of that poem. I wish the day hadn't. Dawn has claimed yet another sky, its birds. The clouds too have gone, dissolved Christ flesh on the tongue. This always which is itself and has no reason. This always which is myself and has no reason, contains so little. Before I knew better, abstraction was a tool I'd use to hide the fact that I didn't know what the hell I was doing. In office hours, however, there's nowhere to hide. It was the 3 of us, my teacher, the poem, and me. Yusef, in his quiet way, questioned, what else? What more? What next? Over the course of our meetings, he'd help me land on a new title. Instead of executions, think death erections. Realize the first three lines were the ones worth keeping, and decide to end on an image. And here's the revised poem with Yusef's expertise. I wish the day hadn't. Dawn has claimed another sky, its birds. I watch from my burning stake the broken necks. Once this lot allowed wild flowers. Nothing worse than bruised wild flowers. Darling dawn, death mask to which I've grown accustomed. Show me one pretty thing, no heavier than a hummingbird. I can't imagine how many thousands of office hours Yusef has spent in service of his students' poems. I can't imagine how many thousands of poems Yusef has midwifed. There are not enough thank yous in the world. To my dear teacher, Yusef Komunyakaa, I offer the above poem, which is as much yours as it is mine. And I am going to read You and I Are Disappearing. And I love this poem. I love all his poems, but this one especially, because of the reason I think Elizabeth Alexander writes in a poem. I'm forgetting the title of it, but Yusef told her that don't write what you know, write what you're willing to discover. And this poem for me feels like discovery. It feels as though I am along with Yusef as he's discovering what image, what line will come next. So this is You and I Are Disappearing. The cry I bring down from the hills belongs to a girl still burning inside my head. At daybreak, she burns like a piece of paper. She burns like foxfire in a thigh-shaped valley. A skirt of flames dances around her at dusk. We stand with our hands hanging at our sides while she burns like a sack of dry ice. She burns like oil on water. She burns like a cattail torch dipped in gasoline. She glows like the fat tip of a banker's cigar, silent as quicksilver, a tiger under a rainbow at nightfall. She burns like a shot glass of vodka. She burns like a field of poppies at the edge of a rainforest. She rises like dragon smoke to my nostrils. She burns like a burning bush driven by a god-awful wind. Okay. John, were you going to say something?
No, that's beautiful. So I think at this point, we can open it up for some of our attendees. If you'd like to maybe ask some questions or say a few words about your own relationship to Yusef Komunyakaa and his work. Stephanie, I think maybe I'll sit back and if you want to welcome people or and orchestrate this, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the easiest thing would be if you'd like to say something. There's a raise your hand feature in the React button. If you click that, there's a raise hand, and then we can go in order of who raises their hand.
Can I quickly give a shout out to my students in the audience?
Yeah.
Hi Alyssa, hi Ellie, hi Helene, Susan. Yes, thank you for coming. My friend Lillian, I just want to give a shout out to everyone for coming. Thank you so much.
I mean, if you're doing that, Jenna, I saw Jenna Malergion's name up there. Um, yeah, so represent.
We do have a request from Anita Larek. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Could readers possibly write the names of the poems in the chat so they can reference them? A lot of gratitude in the chat for the reading.
And if anyone would like to share a favorite Yusef poem, we'd love to listen.
Also, Stephanie was telling me before we got on that the first person to ask a question gets $10 out of her pocket.
That's right. Any brave souls?
No pressure.
Okay, I mean, I could use $10 because I'm an adjunct. I mean, this is like, I don't mean it as a gossipy question. I mean it as someone who hasn't seen him for so long and just wonders how is he? Are you guys in touch? And can you tell him that I wish him all the best and that I say thank you.
Amber was a classmate of mine. We studied with you under Yusef together. Hey, it's been a minute. He is doing well. We saw him very recently. Nicole had organized an event. I was saying to everyone earlier before we got on at Princeton. He was in conversation with Terrence Hayes last month, and he read some of his work. He took questions. He held court, and he's still Yusef. Sharp as ever. Got that beautiful baritone. Nicole, what did you think about?
I thought he looked great, and in addition to everything that you've said, he also had jokes. Which was also nice. He looked good. He looked strong.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I'll invite George, who's raised his hand, to speak.
This is a wonderful second Zoom of the day for me. The first was with Elizabeth Alexander, Esperanza Spalding, and Terry Lynn Carrington. And I had the honor of meeting, I should say, Yusef at a party Major Jackson gave in the Burlington area. And I found myself at one point in the backyard sitting one-on-one talking with Yusef, and it's one of the greatest moments. I was going to read Copacetic Mangus, but somebody already did that great work for me. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, George. Esperanza Spalding. Nice.
That was a wonderful party, George. I remember. My son sold him some chocolate that night, and he never got it. And so that party comes up quite a bit in my household. It's good to see you, George, as always. I think I'm not sure of the content of your conversation, but I can only imagine the two of you. George Thomas is as you can tell from his voice, also he's a radio DJ, and he had a jazz show when I first came to Burlington, and courageously let me join him one night, and we just played Sun Ra. I can only imagine. I know the conversations that you and I have. I would have just loved being a fly on the wall. I probably was hosting, doing my duties, but to hear the two of you probably talk about a music that I know has fed both of you spiritually. Nicole, I have to admit, you're one of you and John are among many of Yusef's former students for whom I wish I had that close eye on my work. I probably would be half the poet that you guys are. He, but what one learns from reading him is that that aesthetic of precision and how the image drives so much of the poems. I've heard him talk about his assignments to students to write linked haiku, which is an assignment that I gave to myself. But yeah, maybe that's a question that I can ask the two of you is on the practical pedagogy side, what did you most take away from his instruction?
I think for me, it was how many ways can we re-see a thing? Right?
Mm,
How many ways can
mhm,
we reimagine it? And I think
mm,
that's partly why I chose the poem "You and I Are Disappearing," right? Because he's seeing this image, and with every line, the burning becomes anew, right? So I think for me, it would be definitely how to reimagine, how to re-see.
I think for me, it was it Wallace Stevens who says we must be willing to kill our darlings, I think. Not to be precious with the work, right? And to think of revision as play, and a process of discovery. So he would look at one of your poems and he would go about 7 lines in and say, what if the poem started here, right? And then about 7 or 8 lines from the bottom, what if it ended here? And he would actually look at different possible endings. And he wouldn't decide for you, but he would show you that there are alternatives, right? Each with different effects. Compression was something that was really, key with him. So there's that. Also, I had to say, at first, when I wanted Yusef to be the Morpheus to my Neo. Yeah. I wanted him to grab me, put me under his wing, and teach me this is how you do it, it's how you live. And what he did was he would talk about poems in office hours and in class, but really he left you alone to either poet or not. And Amber might be able to speak to this as well, right? He would assign books and never check to see if you read them or not. He would give writing assignments and never check back with you. And at first, I took this as maybe a certain aloofness or detachment, but it really was you're grown. If you want to do this, you'll do it, right? And that was, I think, really what I needed at the time as well. So I do try to take some of that into my own teaching. So he was teaching me how to write, but also how to teach too. I would also, Amber, since you're here, maybe you want to say something about that too, having studied with Yusef, maybe what some of your takeaways might have been.
I was thinking about what you're saying. So we were back there in around like 08 or something, right? 2010. Um, well, yeah, and I had a similar experience where I was deciding whether or not to go there, and I heard that he was going to start teaching there, and I was like, okay, it's decided. So thankful for that time. Um, I have ended up for the last 10 years or so, I teach composition, so freshman English and such, academic writing. So very different than sometimes the kids that are seeking out writing poetry versus kids who are in the GE course. And I appreciate from him and feel like it can translate to these other genres and just be something for people in our own humanity, that experimentation, that following the poem, seeing where it leads, writing as a form of discovery. That was something that I had sort of figured out because I came to poetry as a kid as sort of a discovering for myself a place where I could feel safe and have my own autonomy outside of a family that was not a safe place to be. And so, and then to have that sort of reinforced and discover it more through him and how he treated us, like, you know, this collegial way, so you were saying, John, of kind of like, you know, you could check this out, or you won't do that, but you know, just so you know, it's there.
Exactly.
And yeah, very, very thankful for that. And see its influence in, yeah, work as a writer with process and such, but also in thinking about how to encourage other people and have other people know what writing can be for someone, right? Whether they are a poet or someone who would ever read a poem or not, that
Mhm.
writing can still be that for people. So I'm thankful for that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Gustavo, I think you had a hand up, then you took it down. You changed your mind?
No, I still wanted to make a comment. I just got disconnected somehow. And can you guys hear me okay?
Go ahead. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. I don't know why my camera's so blurry. But I don't really, I never studied under Yusef. And so like the connection that I have to him is you, it's Nicole, it's Major, and how much I love your work. And how many times, like you made a comment about that one star in the sky and how Yusef has so many. And I feel that way about you guys as writers, right? And so one, thank you for this. Thank you for the anthology, because it's on my shopping cart for me to get, right? Because I want to learn and I want to grow. And I love the ways in which you all as writers make me just like, damn, I wish I wrote that poem so many different times, right? And this just reminded me that Yusef did that to me too, right? And like to rediscover his work and go back to exploring it, right? And learning from him. So I just want to say thank you guys. Thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you for everything you said and for being here.
Are we allowed to go in yet?
Oh, Anita, yeah?
What time does it start? Okay.
We might just be getting some.
Oh, okay.
Anita, there you go.
I'm from Canada and Toronto, and I studied under Yusef because I've read him for years and years. And I have an intimate acquaintance with him, and I have one of Everyday Mojo songs, and I love jazz. So for me, Yusef is both jazz and violence. So it's kind of a mix, a hybrid taste in my mouth. So I just want to read you 6 lines that I love of his, and it may resonate with people. It's called, I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly, Empyrean Isles. It's on page 247 in his Mojo book. We have gone there. So I got to get this right. We have gone there, sitting here while Herbie plays water on stone, his piano among the misty trees. Can you hear me okay? Want me to go talk louder? Rainy light flows over hillocks beside the sea, leaves and high grass underneath nighttime till the egg glows. A place becomes a shape of one's mind, and secretive animals encounter us sleepwalkers. Dawn flows over round wooden cisterns atop buildings as East River fog journeys along the streets and avenues, etc., etc.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you, Anita.
I'll write it down.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Nicole. Sorry.
I have one more thing that I love about my time with Yusef that I learned from him, and it goes back to what you were saying, John, about precious, things being precious. And I think I admire that everything for Yusef is material for the work. And I think as a poet, I sometimes wait for a specific image or a specific moment that inspires me, but everything in Yusef's life serves as inspiration for the work. And I admire that greatly. Yeah. And I want to be more like him in that way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, thank
Okay.
you. And kind of close on that beautiful thought too, right? um, I want to be respectful of everyone's time. We're so grateful for you being here. John and Nicole, I don't know if you want to say any last words. Um, or
I just want to thank everyone again for showing up tonight and listening and for sharing, those of you who shared, and to the contributors, Jennifer, Major, thank you for your beautiful work. To John, I mean, wonderful to work with you and to love with you, and I'll see you downstairs for dinner. Yeah. Thank you, FAWC, again for all that you do for poets and poetry. It's been a dream working with you, and the night has been beautiful. Thank you for it.
You guys support FAWC in any way you can.
Yeah.
FAWC made a lot of this possible. Major mentioned that he was a fellow in 1999. I was a fellow first in 2007 and most recently in 22. Nicole is taught there. Jennifer is a big part of the place running right now.
And I've taken workshops there.
And you've taken workshops there. Yeah, so all that FAWC does, it makes this possible. And lastly, I'll say, if you haven't, get yourself a copy of this. And it is a really beautiful work, and we were glad to be a part of it, but some little of it has to do with us. There are critical essays, personal essays, poems for Yusef, poems after Yusef, and the contributors, it runs a gamut, people you've heard of, people you need to hear of, so go out and get a copy. And thank you guys. Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, Sharon, Jennifer. It's great.
Thank you, everyone. Lovely.
Yes, yes, yes.
yeah, round of applause to John, Nicole, Major, Jennifer. Thank you so much for sharing such a beautiful night. This is a perfect way to begin the spring, honestly. I feel like so much bloomed. So thank you. Thank you as well to all our attendees. It really means a lot when everyone shows up and spends this time with us. So thank you. I'll echo John. Please buy the anthology. I think I've placed the link like 4 links, 4 times, so I've been pretty obvious as well. But as John mentioned, you know, we have ongoing programming here at the Work Center. You can check out all of what's happening at 24 Pearl Street on our website at fawc.org. I'll drop some links to some upcoming workshops that are virtual and available, but we also have our summer workshop program happening soon. We also have a student open mic night coming up on April 3rd. Elisa Altman is doing a really beautiful sprint workshop titled Do I Have the Right to Tell My Story on April 26th. And we have another free event, which is a presentation by book publisher and podcaster Zibby Owens about the path to publication. So a lot of exciting, beautiful things happening at the Work Center. And most of all, we just want to wish you a great night and thank you again for joining us. And until next time.